Page 33, Gavotte. We've had a Gavotte before. It's a type of dance. You can Google what these are. Now there's two of them here, but it's actually the same piece. They've just transposed it to a different key. So we'll have to talk about that. I'm going to give the lesson on the top one. I'll talk a little bit about the bottom one. I'll leave that really up to you to do. It's the same thing as the top, it's just in a different key. So I'll go through the routine for learning a piece of music and we'll see what we get. I'll look it over, it's 2 lines long. And how do I know these aren't one continuous thing on this page? Because if you look at the end of the second line, at the top, there's a thin and thick bar line. That's the symbol for the end of a piece. If you look at the bottom of the page, at the end of that one, it has its own thin and thick bar line. That tells me these are 2 separate pieces. So I'm not going to take them as one piece. They're separate. So I'm going to talk about the top 2 lines here. I'll get to the bottom 2 lines later. The clef signs are still treble and bass clef, and it's still common time, which is 4/4 time. But if you look at the first measure, there's only 2 counts in it. That's a pickup measure, so we need another measure with 2 counts in it, and at the end of the second line, that's got 2. That's counts 1 and 2. So we're coming in on beat 3 and 4 in. I see quarter notes, eighth notes, half notes, dotted quarter note rhythms. I see some sharp signs, so we're going to have a ball here, ain't we? Right hand, starting here, we're still in our G position. It's 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Now, last measure of the first line, 1 and 2 and 3. That dotted quarter note comes on beat 3. Remember the dotted rhythms. The quarter note gets a beat. The dot gets, in this case, half a beat because it's half the quarter note. It's like an eighth note tied to it. So, and that leaves the eighth note for the and of 4. 3 and 4 and, like so. And you can see how the notes line up between the stanzas because the left hand has quarter notes. And you see the eighth note comes after the last quarter note. That's on the and. 3 and 4 and. Left hand. Well, left hand is actually down here. You're more in a C position. Doesn't matter what the position is. It's just a handy way to say, put your hand here. Generally, we don't think about the position because you're liable to be in all kinds of things. But it's just a handy way of saying, put your hand here. So thumb here, just put your hand here. And it's 3, 4, and then for the F sharp, since second finger's on F, I'm going to use it on the F sharp. 3, 4, 1, 2, F sharp again. The idea? Then I try putting the hands together. And again, when I first put the hands together, I'll hesitate all over, I don't care. I just want to know which fingers are working together. And I'm trusting you know the names of the notes because you'll probably be lost if you don't. But here, 3 and then the here together. And then here. That's what I'm talking about at the end of the first line, where the last 2 beats, the eighth note's after, so it comes after. So I go through and I put the hands together, and then I go back over it however many times it takes, and slowly work out the hesitations, so I can get a steady beat going. Once I can do that, then I'll think about the articulation. We have phrasing in the right hand. Lift up. Lift up. Lift up. So I'm lifting up. Just a little lift, like taking a breath. And the left hand, connect it all. Here. So I lift up here, but not here. And the second line, first measure, I have to lift up for the phrase, and the left hand has a repeated note, so I can lift both hands together here. Get the idea with the phrasing? That's the only articulation to give. That's okay. Dynamics, you start out with MP. MP is mezzo piano. moderately soft, sort of soft, and that's the melody, which is the right hand. Left hand's very soft. In the second line, the first measure, you get an MF, moderately loud, mezzo forte. Left hand still in the background. Then we get this arrow, this crescendo arrow, to go up to loud. Well, over time, you'll develop a feel for these crescendos and diminuendos. You're taking a few beats to get there, so take your time. We're going to start in the third measure. We're still moderately loud here. I'm staying moderately loud for that measure. Now I go up a little bit. Now I'm loud. And the right hand. The left hand stays in the background. So moderately loud, a little louder, loud. So it's almost like every couple of beats or so I went up just a little bit. You feel it. As experiment and you feel it. Just don't get loud until where the F is, the forte is. They don't give us speed, but keep in mind it's a dance. People are going to move 1, 2, 3, 4. Have fun. You may feel a little retardando there. You have to be careful. If it's a dance and people are moving to it, I don't recommend doing any tempo changes. Keep a steady tempo throughout the whole thing. You mess up the dancers and they throw stuff at you because they don't like it. So be careful there. Now just briefly, I want to go over this gavotte at the bottom of the page. It is the same piece as the top one. The difference is they've transposed it or moved it to a different key. They've changed it. We haven't had keys yet, so you don't know this yet. So just pretend you don't know it yet. But the top one's in the key of G major. We'll get to keys eventually. And the bottom one, they've taken everything down a whole step. Have we had whole steps and half steps? I can't remember. Can't remember what I had for breakfast. Just briefly. Let's just talk briefly on the keyboard. It's important you understand whole steps and half steps because we kind of build everything on half steps. A half step is the closest distance between any two notes we have in our harmonic system. On piano, a half step is the next note up or down, white or black. Here, if I go a half step up, I go here. That's the next note. It's a half step. There's no note in between them. If I go down a half step, it's here. Here, if I go up a half step, it's here, because there's no note in here. If I go down a half step, it's here. That's a half step. That's it. A whole step is simply two halves, two half steps. So you have, that's a half step, and that's a half step, so that is a whole step. There's one note in between. Half step, or whole step is here, because there's one note in between. Here, that's a whole step because there's one note in between. It's a whole step. Just keep it in mind. We're going to use this a lot later on. What they've done in this gavotte, if they've taken the piece at the top, which was here, and they've taken it down a whole step. So everything just went down a whole step, all the notes. For instance, in the first measure, here you have a B at the top. We'll look at the bottom here. The first note is an A. That's a whole step down. So the first measure was here and then a half step. See I'm looking at the top part here. I'm moving in half steps here. That's half steps. Well, at the bottom we do the same thing. We just start here and go a half step up. It's a half step. So all I'm doing is I'm moving whole steps and half steps exactly like I did up above. I'm just starting a whole step lower. So here, at the bottom, it's the same piece. I'm just a whole step lower on the keyboard. It changes the key, it changes the harmony, it changes the mood. And as far as playing the piano, you're starting here. You're kind of in this position. right hand went down. The left hand is staying in the same position it was up above because we can cover all the notes we need right there. Because if you'll notice, when we were playing the top part here, we never used the little finger. We only use these notes. Well, then when we move it down a half step, we're going to use these notes. So the hand itself didn't need to move. We're still covering all the notes. The right hand had to move down one. So we were from here to here. And we're going to use B flats. You notice all the B's in the lower part are flatted. We're in the key of F major. Again, we'll get to the keys later. So we went from G major to F major on the bottom one. It's the same piece. It's the same as above. Yeah, you can have fun with that if you want. Just keep in mind you can have a piece written in multiple keys, in various places around the keyboard, and we'll get into a little more of that. Let's play this together very slowly on just the top one up here. This is after you've learned it. You can play it with no hesitations. I'm going to give us 2 counts because we come in on beat 3. I'm going to go ready, go, and then we're just going to go. I'm not going to do louds and softs. I'm just playing the notes and the rhythms, but I will lift up for the phrasing in the right hand. Ready and go and.